Good morning, everyone. I continue to talk on this book, Opening the Hand of Thought. Today I'd like to talk on one paragraph in page 128. Let me read this paragraph. Paragraph 3 of page 128. We assume that we are all living together in one commonly shared world. However, this is not true from the perspective of the reality of our actual life experience, which we learn about through letting go of our thought in the Zen. For example, when you and I look at a cup, we usually assume that we are looking at the very same cup, but this isn't so in terms of true raw life experience. I am looking from my angle and with my power of vision, and you are looking from your angle and with your power of vision. There is absolutely no way we can exchange nor understand each other's experience. So in this paragraph, he's talking about even when we think we see the same cup as it's a raw reality, raw experience. We are seeing what we see is different. He is talking this paragraph in order to discuss about magnanimous mind or big mind, daishin, that is one of the three minds that is called sanshin, three mind or heart. And this daishin in this text is magnanimous mind, or dai is big or large. And he said this magnanimous mind is the mind without discrimination. And in the previous page, in 127, he used the expression jin issai jiko. Jin is entire or all or whole, entire, and issai is everything. So this jiko is a self that is connected and one with all beings. To awake to this reality of the self and to do things based on that awakening is magnanimous mind. So magnanimous mind, according to Dogen, is like a mind of great mountain or a mind of great ocean. Great mountain have no discrimination against any kind of living beings, or tall tree or tiny grass, or big animals or small animals until bacteria. Mountain embrace all of them and allow them the space to live. And the mountain itself doesn't move. It's not shaky. And about the ocean, any water from all different river came into the ocean and the ocean doesn't discriminate them, but accept as a part of the ocean. So, and this, in this case, ocean is a metaphor of Buddhist Sangha. All people came from different social classes or races or any kind of spiritual background, or people who had various experience or education coming into the Sangha, and Shakyamuni Buddha accept all of them without without discrimination based on their original social status. Within the Sangha, only the distinction is seniority, how many years the person is in the Sangha as a monk, that's all. Anyway, so that is the magnanimous mind or big mind, to awaken to this, the self connected with all beings. And then in the previous paragraph, Uchiyama Rōshi raised a question. We can awake to this self with connected with all beings, but in our daily lives, it's not possible. It's only kind of an idea when we are sitting in the zendo and letting go of thought. We can, sit without making discrimination. Or even though within our thought, even we are sitting, our thinking is discriminative. But we can open our hand and letting go of those self-centered ideas. So it's possible to be the self together with all beings, only in our zazen. But when we get out of the zendo, we have really the objects which are different, and we have to make distinction what I should do in this situation with that person or that things. So in our daily lives, we cannot be, or we cannot live as a jinsai jiko. That is the question Uchiyama Rōshi raised. And from this paragraph, he is going to give an answer. And he said, not only in the zendo, but also even when we work in the outside of the zendo, together with different people about different things, still we live the self together with all beings. And in order to explain that, he started to talk about our experience is really personal. To me, that was really strange. He said, as example, he said, when you and I look at a cup, I look this cup, and you see the same cup. We usually assume that we are looking at the very same cup. I think we usually think so. But this isn't so. But Uchiyama Rōshi said it's not true. It's in terms of a true raw life experience. I am looking from my angle, and with my power of vision. And you are looking from your angle and with your power of vision. There is absolutely no way we can exchange nor understand each other's experience. So our experience is really personal. So we cannot share the same experience even when we are looking at the same cup or same water. I first read this text when I was a university student, and this is really strange. This idea, we are living together with all beings, and our experience is only me, only mine. These are kind of opposite, and how can these two can be connected? That is very interesting, but difficult point to understand Uchiyama Rōshi's teaching, at least to me. And yet Uchiyama Rōshi said this, very often, almost every time he gave a talk. And because of, he always have a glass of water when he give a talk. So he often said, I see this from my angle with my power of vision, and you do the same. So we cannot tell what we see is the same thing or not, or what that is very kind of a, how can I say, individual. Our life, we have to live individual life. How can we live together with all beings if our experience is only mine? And yet this is really important point of Uchiyama Rōshi's teaching, or his way of thinking. And it's not only Uchiyama Rōshi's. I mean, when he talks about this and the personal experience, he is talking about how our life looks like. And if you have read this book, in this version it said, From the Zen Kitchen to Enlightenment, Defining Your Life. Sometimes publisher change the title. But this is Uchiyama Rōshi's commentary on Tenzo Kyokun. And Uchiyama Rōshi draws some diagrams. And this is very small. But another book Uchiyama Rōshi wrote around the same time. He made a larger version of the same, paragraphs, same diagrams. And this Jin Issai Jiko, the self with all beings, is this one. We are together with entire world. And what he's saying in this paragraph is this one. Our life, this one, we cannot exchange anything with others. This is a starting point of his discussion. And his conclusion is we are living together with entire world. So this is a part of his understanding of the structure of the self. So if we think only this part, individual part, and this Jin Issai Jiko part, this is really, to me at least, contradicted. How can these two be one? But this idea is not Uchiyama Rōshi's personal idea. We cannot even share the perspective or the things we see even at the same time. Came from Dogen Zenji. This idea also came from Dogen Zenji. As I talked last month, I think this came from Shobo Genzo, Yui Butsu Yobutsu, or Buddha, only Buddha together with Buddha. But our views are different. Each person's views are different. came from Sansuikyo, or the Mountain and Water Sutra. This is the latest book of mine. He mentioned the same thing in Genjo Koan also, that this analogy is called Issui Shiken. Ichi is one, and sui is water, and shi is four, and ken is view. So one water, one same water, or one glass or cup, is seen four different views. And Dogen says like this: if you have this book, the Mountains and Waters Sutra, and you want to check, this appears in paragraph 19 and page 28. Dogen said, in general, then the way of seeing mountains and waters, so he's talking about mountains and waters, differs according to the type of being that sees them. So depending upon who we are, the mountain or water looks differently. In seeing water, there are beings who see it as a jeweled necklace, This does not mean, however, that they see a jeweled necklace as water. This analogy of Issui Shiken is one same water for different types of living beings seeing in completely different way. That is, as a human beings, we see this water as water. But heavenly beings, it is said, heavenly beings see the water as a jeweled necklace. And the fish, dragons and fish, see water as their palace or their dwellings. And it is said the hungry ghost see water as a pus and blood. So depending upon which realms we are, the same one water can be seen differently. And now he's talking about in the case of living beings, I mean heavenly beings. Heavenly beings see water as a jeweled necklace. But Dogen asks, even though heavenly beings see water as a jeweled necklace, what is the water for heavenly beings? Does it make sense? If this is a jeweled necklace for heavenly beings, what is the water for heavenly beings? And this is a question. How then do we see what they consider water? Their jeweled necklace is what we see as water. Some see water as miraculous flowers, though it does not follow that they use flowers as water. So water is seen different ways, but they must consider something as their water. Then what is that? Hungry ghosts see water as raging flames or as pus, P-U-S, pus and blood. Dragons and fish see water as a palace or a tower. or as the 7 treasures or the money gem. Others see it as wood and walls, or as the Dharma nature of immaculate liberation, or as a true human body, or as a physical form and mental nature. Humans see these as water, and these different ways of seeing are the conditions under which water is killed or given life. And next paragraph. Given that what different types of beings see is different, we should have some doubt about this. It is that there are various ways of seeing one object. Or is it that we have mistaken various images for one object? Let me go to the next paragraph. He said, if we reflect further on the real import of this question, although we say there is water of the various types, it would seem there is no original water, no water of various types. Nevertheless, the various waters in accordance with the types of beings do not depend on the mind, do not depend on the body of these things. They do not arise from different types of karma. They are not dependent on self. They are not dependent on other. So Dogen raised many questions about this analogy. And one important question he raised is, we assume there is one water, and this one water is seen different ways by different types of beings. But we assume there is one water. But how we can know there is such one water before seen by all those different types of beings? I think this is really a good question. That means we human beings see as water, so we think this things is water. And these things called water, to me, to us, can be seen in different ways by different living beings. But water we see as human beings is also only one way of viewing that thing. How can we know there is one same thing, one object that all different beings see different ways? Is it possible to see the reality itself before no one sees? All views are depending upon the person's consciousness, the being's consciousness, and that thing. This is a very important part of teaching in Yogacara. Depending upon the karmic seeds stored in our deepest layer of consciousness, we see, so not only those different beings, but only even among same human beings, depending upon the karmic seeds stored in our deepest layer of our consciousness called araya, storehouse consciousness. Even when we see the same things, we all see this as water. But even we know this is water, but as Uchiyama Rōshi said, we don't see the same ways depending upon our the condition of our karmic consciousness, or even this person, even one person, may see this same thing different ways, depending upon the condition of this person. When I'm really thirsty, this is really important to me, more precious than any treasures. But when I already drank too much water, this is meaningless. Or when in Japanese culture, water is really important thing to grow rice and other vegetables. When they have a drought, they don't have rain for a long time, they pray the dragon god to give them some rain. And when they see when it starts to rain, they are really happy. For them, water is like a blessing from the heaven. But if the rain continue 1 month, the view of the farmers about the water is different. They start to wish to stop raining. So, depending upon the situation of our consciousness or our condition, one thing can mean very different. Or even, when we had a typhoon or the tsunami, we feel, water is like a demon or a monster. So even among ourselves or among human beings in the human society, even one thing can be seen in very different ways. And Dogen's question is, that's one thing that can be called water as it is, before seeing from other beings, before seeing by human beings or hungry ghost or heavenly beings. How can we say there is such a thing, water as it is, before seeing by anything? Because we are one of the sinner, one of the person who observe this. However we see this one, it's already the object of this person's consciousness. We don't see the water as it is. So this is really interesting question. So I'd like to find the origin of this analogy in Yogacara teaching. This is one, I think, only, as far as I know, only thing Dogen used the analogy from Yogacara teaching. Because he was ordained and he studied Tendai teaching when he was young, basic understanding of Buddhist teachings for Dogen is Tendai. And Tendai and Yogacara didn't go well, usually. Anyway, so Dogen probably not used so many quotes from Yogacara teachings. But the interesting is Sawakiroshi studied Yogacara, and so from Sawakiroshi, Dogen's teaching and Yogacara are a little bit mixtured. And as the origin of this analogy of one water and four views, this appears in this text of Yogacara entitled in English translation, The Summary of the Great Vehicle. The Summary of Great Vehicle. This text was written by a Sangha Asanga is one of the two major masters or teacher as a founder of Yogacara teaching. And Asanga's younger brother is Vasubandhu. Anyway, these two are the most important teachers in Yogacara. And this text is written by Asanga, not Vasubandhu. If you want to check this text, it's page 98. When I was a university student, I was encouraged to study one teachings, Kegon or Yoshiki or Yogacara or Tendai or anything. So I studied Yogacara because I knew Sakiroshi studied Yogacara. So I studied quite a lot about Yogacara, but I forget everything.
Did he live about the same time as Nagarjuna, or was he after?
No. Nagarjuna lived, it is said Nagarjuna lived in middle of 1st century, no, 2nd century to the middle of 3rd century. And Asanga and Vasubandhu lived, I think, 4th to 5th century, so quite late. And the sutras made before Nagarjuna were called Ari Mahayana. And the sutras made between after Nagarjuna and before Asanga and Vasubandhu is called Middle Mahayana Sutras. And after that, it's called later Mahayana. So I studied quite a lot about Yogacara when I was a student, but now I forget everything. So I cannot really explain what is said here. But this analogy of one water, four views is appeared in this page, but it doesn't say water. It only said hungry ghost, animals, men, all gods. So hungry ghost, animals is like a fish or dragon, and men is human beings, and all gods are heavenly beings. Each have their own different ideas about a single object, about one single object. They have different ideas. The original Chinese word for this different ideas is Xin. This Xin, different mind. Because each one has a different mind, we see the same object differently. And concluding that the object they conceptualize is valid. That means each person conceptualizes this thing, this object, in the way it accords with their consciousness. So this is about the subject and object, or in this case, eye and color, or some things, or 6 sense organs and 6 objects of sense organs. And when these sense organs and object of sense organs encounter, 6 consciousness is caused. Those are called 18 elements of our life. And according to Buddha's teaching, these 18 elements are all they are. Actually, we can experience. And what Yogacara people wanted to say is, we don't really see the subject themselves, but what we see is already conceptualized within 6 consciousnesses. So what we really see is the object that is already conceptualized. This is what Uchiyama Rōshi said. We really don't see the raw reality, but we kind of cook within our consciousness, and that is what we see. So depending upon what kind of consciousness or the condition of our consciousness, the object is seen different ways. So each person, not only those four different beings, but even among human realms, each person has different karmic conditions. So we see even one thing different ways. And the interesting is the reason, in Yogacara teaching, using this analogy, is because we see only the reflection of object, not object themselves. That is what Yogacara teaching is called a consciousness only. So we don't see the things, real things outside, but we only see the reflection of things outside. So let me go to the last part of this discussion. It said, all things appear as objects within their own minds. So appeared in their consciousness, within our consciousness, as object. When non-imaginative wisdom, this non-imaginative wisdom is a translation of Mufunbetchi. Usually this is translated as a non-discriminative wisdom that sees oneness and emptiness of being. But when we see in this way within our consciousness or as an object of our consciousness, that is six sense organs are consciousness, mind or consciousness, and the object of that mind is concept. So all things appear as object within their own minds. When non-imaginative or non-discriminative wisdom is cultivated, no object appears. Know then that no external object exists. So actually there's no object exist, and thus there is no consciousness construction either. That means when we see, everything we see is the reflection of outside things in our consciousness. Then we see, this is only consciousness. That means we are free from bound between these two. And what this text is saying is, because of this, by seeing everything we see, everything we experience is only consciousness. Then
Sorry, may I stop you a second? You said, then we're free from the bond between these two. Which two did you mean? Between the view?
Subject and object.
Okay, thank you.
Depending upon what kind of seed we have, there's a certain fixed way of viewing things, habitual way of viewing things. Okay. But when we see that is only consciousness, and therefore that thing is not really there outside or objectively. Then final thing this text want to say is, and thus there is no conscious construction either. Means this is also not really real thing. So this means actually what means is there's no subject and object separation. That is the reason, Yogacara teachers use this analogy. Please.
Could we say that in that sense, we're talking about the prajna eye, where everything, there's no separation?
Yeah, that is what in the next section, he said, this text said, non-imaginative or non-discriminative wisdom and the perfection of wisdom, that is prajna paramita, are synonymous. So when we see consciousness only, there's the separation between subject and object is dropped off. That is when we see oneness of subject and object. So this is really kind of an important starting point to show this to make a conclusion that we are living together with all beings. As a subject of consciousness or concept, each one of us seeing even the same thing in different ways. But when we really see that reality, we really understand that reality, then we can be free from our way of thinking, our way of viewing things. So that allows us to become free from separation between subject and object and the habitual way of seeing what this is. So this, please.
So is that emptiness then?
Emptiness and interconnectedness and oneness with all beings is seen when we deeply understand that our view or concept we create in our mind about the things outside is really different among each of us. Then we understand we don't really, in the level of consciousness or thinking mind, our way of viewing things are different, our experience are different. And when we see that is elusive, that is delusive, then we start to see, this being experience other things, and other things are really one thing. That is what Dogen called total function. There's no subject-object separation, but this is a self and myriad things are not really subject and object, because this self, ourselves, is a part of myriad things. So in a sense, within myriad things, this person is seeing other things. But this is happening within this myriad things, myriad dharmas, as a part of function of this myriad dharmas. That is where we start to see we are living together with all beings. So in order to reach that point, we have to see, what we see is limited based on our karmic consciousness. So, well, this is my understanding of why Uchiyama Rōshi can or did discuss these two almost opposite things as part of the structure of the self. Please.
So in your drawing there, where you have the subject and then the object, and you drew an X over the subject, and so what I think you meant when you drew that X was that the subject and object relationship is...
Yeah, not only object, but also subject disappeared. Subject, object, as Shakyamuni said, is like a bundle of something like a straw. How can I say? Rely on each other, then they can stand. That means two relative things
they support each other.
Yeah, but when one thing disappeared, other thing also disappeared.
And that would be basically Dogen's teaching of dropping off body and mind, right?
Yeah. Self, 5 skandhas and object of 5 skandhas dropped off. And also, our 5 skandhas separate or divided into 2 sides as subject and object. And, we 5 skandhas cling to 5 skandhas or attach. So, but to me, dropping off body and mind means 5 skandhas dropped off the attachment or clinging to the 5 skandhas themselves. Then that is what is said, 5 skandhas are empty. Therefore, there's no way to 5 skandhas as subject can attach itself to the 5 skandhas as object.
Well, that was my next question, actually, is that then it means the result of the subject and object relationship falling apart is that then the self is not substantial anymore.
Empty.
Right.
And the objects are also empty.
And I have another question.
That emptiness is interconnectedness. Emptiness does not mean really nothing.
Right.
But all beings are living together, relying, supporting each other. So there, we cannot say there's no self and no others. That is what emptiness means. So emptiness and interconnectedness are the same thing. 2 names of one reality. Please.
Later on in the book, I believe Uchiyama Rōshi is talking about death. And he says something like, when a person dies, their whole world dies.
Yeah.
And I think that might be related to what we're talking about here. Is that true? Or?
Yeah, I think so. Because he said the world of so-called raw, fresh, uncooked reality. When we are born together with this entire world. And while we are living together with this entire world. And when we die together with this entire world of raw experience. That's what he said. But when we think, we can think, these things he draws in the middle between these two sides is the way we think and the way we live based on our thinking. Means there is something we want and something we don't like or we don't want, and we chase after something we want and escape from something we don't like. And so our life become compete with others who can gain more about the things we wish. But that is the world created by our thinking. There must be something variable and something that is not variable. And so almost as a purpose of our life, we need to gain this thing, like money or fame or status or something, or we need to escape from poverty or other negative things. And we in our mind, we create, this is a world. And one time in the past, we are born within this world like a stage. And we live for a while as a part of this kind of a drama with other hero or heroine, or winner or loser. And sooner or later, we get out of this stage. This is the life created within our mind as a collective human dream. But according to Uchiyama Rōshi, as a reality, there's no such world before I am born, and there's no such world after I died. The real reality is only what I experience and how we did. So that is what Jin Saijiko means. In that world of raw experience, everything within this world is me. That is what Jin Saijiko means. So how we live in this way, awake to this reality, and become free from that kind of, like a world of winner and loser. According to Buddha and Uchiyama Rōshi and Dogen, that is a fabrication. Well, that is what I have to say this morning. More questions or comments?
Yeah, I'm curious. I'm trying to remember Dogen's quotation about to study the Dharma is to study the self is to forget the self. Mm-hmm. How does that end? What is the last? He says something about
being confirmed by the myriad.
Yeah, it's to drop off. And to drop off the self of all beings.
To study the Buddha way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. And to forget the self is to be verified by myriad dharmas.
Is that the ending? Is that the end of that quotation?
No. To be verified by myriad things is to drop off body and mind of the self and body and mind of others. I think that is it. I'm
curious about that particular part of it, because it seems like it ties into this in some way.
Yeah, that is what he's saying, I think, in Genjoku. Please.
I'm just kind of formulating this in my head as I'm going, but I'm thinking about how we talk about emptiness, and how we talk about reality. It's sort of like we draw a boundary around what emptiness is, it becomes a thing by itself. As with reality, reality. And for myself, I'm just trying to think of a different way of approaching it, like thinking of emptiness or reality as a verb rather than this thing. So emptiness is always this process of
process of or function of entire myriad dharmas. That is what Dogen says, total function or zenki. So if we think emptiness is a kind of existence, then it's totally wrong. As Nagarjuna said, if emptiness grasped wrongly, it become like a poison. And emptiness is a medicine to help us being free from self-clinging. But if we cling to emptiness, Nagarjuna said there's no medicine to heal. So emptiness cannot be the object of our mind as a noun. But emptiness is the way we are, or the way things are, together with including self and all other beings. So I think what you said is correct.
I just kind of want to expand on something a little bit. I've been looking at Ken Anada's translation of Arjuna's. I can never remember that title. The Karika, yeah. But he talks in kind of a strange term, and it's hard for me to interpret it. He talks about the anterior and the posterior. And
could you say it again?
Anterior and the posterior. Before and after. And I want to think that, of course, I want to go to its before and after, past and future. And I think somehow he's trying to get across something that it means more than that, or it's more, how to say it? I'm kind of having difficulty translating it myself, thinking, why is he calling it anterior? Why is he calling it posterior?
Could it be sort of like Dogen's idea of the firewood and the ash? Could it be referring to something like that? Before and the after?
He said before and after is cut off. But that means only this moment is the real reality.
Yes. It's kind of like thinking about emptiness. For me to make it a verb gives it more meaning, makes it more appropriate to the way we think about it in Buddhism. And so I'm thinking about what anterior and posterior means in the way that Kenneth Anada is translating Nagarjuna's work.
How can you use emptiness as verb in English?
Well,
in Japanese we can.
Yeah.
Put the word suru, kuzuru.
But that's what I want to do, is make it a verb.
So how can you do that in English?
In your mind.
Yeah, it's really difficult to express, that kind of idea in Buddhism in English. Please.
If you think of something that is always changing, then it doesn't really make sense to think of it as a noun. That's one thing, right? It's more like a process that's always evolving. I don't know how you would express that.
That's the problem.
Yeah, but
doing emptiness, literally, something's doing emptiness.
Right.
Emptiness is doing emptiness. It's awesome.
so anyway, something that's always changing and evolving.
Yeah, the problem for us human beings is until we make a noun, name, we cannot think and talk about that things.
Right.
But when we do this, we discriminate something which is not empty, even about emptiness.
Right.
That is a problem. Do you have something
I
to
was
say?
going to say this similar thing.
Right.
All concepts,
Yeah,
when you make the concept, you're making it a noun.
yeah.
To
So,
talk about it otherwise.
yeah,
it's
so in that sense, what only thing we can do is shut up our mouth and sit facing the wall. But that doesn't also work to share this truth or reality with other people. So how we can express this thing that cannot be, that is beyond expression, beyond language, using language. That is how, Shakyamuni and all Buddhist teachers are trying to say. That I think that is why, in Buddhist text there are so many contradiction and nonsense. Okay, anything else?
So, as I'm hearing you talk, I'm just quickly going to make a connection. So, just to begin with, I think it's really interesting, this idea that Dogen's Tendai and Yogacara kind of have a conflict. Because in my mind, my impression has always been we descend pretty directly from Yogacara. So I want to, at some point, I'd like to hear some more about that. But when you were talking about individual beings and the same being over time, approaching things with different mind, literally different different mind, it reminded me that a couple of weeks ago I gave a talk here on equanimity as part of the Brahma Viharas. And I don't remember the Japanese and the Sanskrit word for that, but the translation was to meet everything with the same mind. So I'm putting that together with Sagan's bringing up this prajna eye, right? So I'm thinking, if indeed we can back up and see everything with the same mind, with that prajna eye, we have equanimity, right? Is there some relationship there? Do you think that's an actual relationship? Meeting things with the same mind and meeting things with different mind, leading to equanimity? Not a quick question. Okay.
It might be connected to the idea of, having sort of harmonizing the Dharma eye and the Buddha eye. I mean, the Dharma eye and the Prajna eye.
Prajna, yeah.
In the sense that Prajna eye sees everything as even, which would be equanimity and sort of stability.
Same mind, same heart mind.
And the other one sees all the differences, the diversity. That's kind of introduces more of the dynamism.
The idea of prajna and dharma eye is that is part of five kind of eyes. First two are flesh eye, our human eye, and second is heavenly eye, divine eye. And these are, I think, discriminating eye. And third one, prajna eye, is the eye which sees emptiness and equality and oneness. And according to Nagarjuna, this eye allows us to be free from self-centeredness or clinging to our self-attachment. But the next one, fourth, is Dharma eye. Dharma eye is in Yogacara called later attained discriminating wisdom. That is based on the equality of all beings. We need to see the difference. That means we see the difference without attachment. Because prajna eye can allow us us being free from self-attachment. But this doesn't work when we try to help others. Each person has different problems. So as a bodhisattva or a Buddha, like a doctor, we have to see what is a particular problem or cause of that problem for this person in front of our eyes. To do so, we have to see the difference. So within Dharma, both are there included. Both means first to discriminating eye, and third, prajna eye. So within Dharma eye, both discrimination and non-discrimination are there. or discrimination without attachment is there. But it is something to do with Tendai and Yogacara.
That was just a separate
Okay.
observation that was interesting. Yeah, I was just it was occurring to me as you were talking about meeting something with a different mind, and I was thinking about I had just been speaking about meeting everything with the same mind, and I'm thinking it's when we can back up and hold both of those things, as you're saying, being able to see the difference and being able to see the oneness.
Both are important. Yes.
Equanimity arises
Yes.
there because we're seeing a complete view.
Yeah.
As close as we can as limited humans.
It seems to me there's a real close connection also to the teaching of Genjo Koan. Each moment coming up, there's a certain, there's a oneness or the stability, and yet there's change going on. So each moment coming up is different, and so it could throw us off if we didn't have equanimity.
Right, but that moment is also complete, right? I mean, there's nothing outside that moment. So we have these individual functions, and we also have total functioning, which is an interesting thing to hold and practice with, I think. Yeah.
And of course, in the Genjo Koan, there's that quip about the self that you just said.
Right.
In Shobo Genzo Zenki, he used the expression Genjo and Todas. Genjo is manifestation or actualization, and Todas is revelation. In each moment, for example, a baby actualizes or manifests itself 100% as a baby. But at the same time, in that moment, the baby is free from babyhood. Baby is 100% baby. But within this reality of 100% of baby, there is a power which negates the babyhood. That's why this baby can grow and become something else, like a boy or girl. So 100% firewood, and yet firewood has a power to negate firewood and become ash when it's burned. So 100% here and now as this being, and yet at the same time, this being is free from being this being. That is a kind of a strange idea, but that is how Dogen see the reality of each moment.
Is that connected to, I've heard the wording, something obstructs itself, or something obstruction?
Yeah.
Is that the same notion as what you just...
Yeah. He also used the obstruction is keige. Keige appeared in the Heart Sutra as a negated mukeige. Keige is to obstruct or hinder. But Dogen used keige and not keige, negation of keige. At the same time, in one sentence, and both are positive. That means, in the case of a baby is obstructed as within babyhood. So baby needs to be a baby, but it's also not hindered by babyhood. So this thing is not really a baby, but this thing is 100% baby. It is a really strange idea, but Dogen used these two opposite expression at the same time and try to say this is it, 100% this is it, but 100% this is not it. Like Shohaku Okumura is a Buddhist priest, and I cannot negate this, so I try to function as a Buddhist priest. But is there such a thing called Buddhist priest, Shohaku? Doesn't know.
It reminds me again of those last phrases of that quotation before about drop off the self and the self of all beings. In a sense, the obstruction and the non-obstruction.
Yeah.
I just have a comment. I don't see it as a strange idea to say it's 100% Vedic and 100% not Vedic. We do it every time that we sit.
Yeah.
We're 100% our ideas, and then we come back to Zazen, and we're 100% not our ideas. We do that every second, every minute.
Yeah. To express or to share that idea or insight to with other people, we have to use language. And when we try to express or explain that reality using language, somehow language didn't work well. So we have to use very strange expression or almost nonsense or very illogical idea, or that because reality is not so logical.
If I could just offer one more thing. Recently I saw something about a description of suffering, dukkha, and counter would be sukha, I think. And sukha as thinking total function, and of course dukkha as suffering, or being stuck and flowing. So being stuck in your life, or being stuck in something, or suffering with something, or flowing and being within your life, even with discomfort, being within your life.
That is our Zazen.
We should probably.
Okay.
We still have a little piece to do.
Okay, thank you very much. Beings are numberless. I vow to freedom. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it.
take a few moments to set up here. Oh, I'm reading the
Yeah, do your announcements and then we'll have that done. We'll find Val on that.
Sunday announcements, December 16th.